Breslin, the snarling Irish bad boy, had a thirst for Damon Runyon-esque guys and dolls. When the Herald Tribune folded in 1967, Clay raised $1 million and combined it with his severance pay to give birth to his dream, the first magazine devoted entirely to one city, New York. It was 1968, and the country was coming apart at the seams with two shattering assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Senator Robert Kennedy. New York City was in an economic tailspin. Racial fury seethed in Harlem while Columbia's anti-war students were chanting, "Revolution." I was there in graduate school. Out of the turmoil of 1968, Clay fathered a new generation of star journalists, among them Gloria Steinem, whom he first turned loose on politics and later showcased with her own magazine, Ms., inside the pages of New York. Clay and his tribe invented an alternate New York, a circus of street culture as seen through the eyes of a new young generation of escapees from the suburbs. Most of his writers were rebels with a cause, free living and loving on the new frontier, far from the confines of white flight, fascinated by every ingredient in the urban stew pot, the Big Apple. It was within this turmoil that Clay and I began our relationship, challenging each other with ideas, chasing stories, wrestling through the feminist revolution to educate, or annihilate, each other, falling in love, and resisting the convention of marriage. After a whirlwind 17-year courtship, we finally married in our middle years, in 1984, and adopted a child. Clay was a progressive, but he never had any fixed ideological point of view. There was no formula his writers had to fit. He often said people do their best work when they are valued for their personal vision and not just for their professional skills. This became the Felker effect. Clay's duplex apartment on Manhattan's Upper East Side defined him. It was the stage set upon which, starting in his 30s, he learned to play the role of the quintessential New York editor. Buttons on the phones were always alight. The door was always open. People streamed in and out, talking, asking, pitching. Emerging from the elevator, guests found themselves looking down from a balcony into a sunken living room. Framed by cathedral windows behind him, Clay occupied a big club chair by the fireplace, devouring soft-boiled eggs and 5 daily newspapers. "Look who's here!" was his welcoming bellow to breakfast guests, as if they were the most important people in the world. Clay's greatest gift was to be a natural mentor. He lent himself to be used as an opportunity for others' development, becoming a protean assemblage of all the talents he nurtured. If he thought you could do it, he made you believe you could. Milton Glaser, the Bronx-bred artist and graphic designer, who was Clay's partner in starting New York Magazine, was amused by Clay's constant astonishment at the ways of the city. He never developed the thick, cynical veneer of so many other editors, Milton said. Clay was always vulnerable to fresh ideas and possibilities. Various aspiring novelists tried to fictionalize Clay, but none successfully captured the man behind the scenes. I believe my daughter Maura, the stepdaughter he adored, came closest. "When I was around 5 or 6, she wrote, I began to form the impression that he was magic. Whenever Clay thrust out a hand for a taxi, a checker cab appeared, even though there were hardly any left in New York. I'd look up 2nd Avenue at the tide of yellow, and there wouldn't be one in sight. The next thing I knew, I was climbing in and opening up the jump seat, trying to remember when I'd looked away. When we went somewhere with him, he'd often just start off walking impossibly fast down some dark street. I'd yank my mother to keep up in her heels. If I asked how much longer, he'd stab a pointed finger into the air and grunt, just, and then suddenly he'd stop and there would be a door and we'd go in and there would be great music, a splendid room, some unbelievable delight, people sounds, something happening. It was magic. So I learned, like everyone else, that even though you didn't know where you were going, if you were with Clay, it was going to be fun and probably fascinating, maybe even spectacular." Inflated by ambition, Clay finally flew too high. He spent too much to buy the Village Voice, hired a chef for editorial lunches, and launched a West Coast version of New York, a poor cousin called New West. Ironically, the moguls who prospered by investing in his success, who loved dining out on the buzz about